Hi everyone, my name is Beth Estes. I am a school psychologist and a board certified behavior analyst, and I work in the clinical department in the Kingston site at the Center for Spectrum Services. And today I'm going to talk to you about reinforcement. So this is module number 2, and it's titled Using Reinforcement to Promote Appropriate Behavior. I hope you all find this helpful. Let's get started. So what is reinforcement? So reinforcement is not necessarily good or bad. So reinforcement is any consequence that increases the likelihood that the behavior will be repeated. So once a behavior occurs and there's a consequence, if that behavior occurs again, then that would be considered reinforcement. So there are two types of reinforcement. So there's positive reinforcement and there's negative reinforcement. We're really going to focus on positive reinforcement today, but neither is good or bad, okay? It's just positive reinforcement is something added to the environment that increases likelihood that the behavior will be repeated. And negative reinforcement is something that's taken away, that's aversive or maybe perceived as aversive or unpleasant. It's removed from the environment that again increases the likelihood that the behavior will be repeated. And as you can see in this cute little picture here with this baby in the swimming pool, is they're relaxing, right? So they've had a rough day and they're removing that unpleasantness and they are allowing the break, right? So that's just a cute little example of what negative reinforcement might look like. So again, we are going to be really focusing on positive reinforcement today. So again, adding something to the environment as a consequence for behavior. And again, the purpose is to increase the likelihood that that appropriate behavior will happen again. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at a YouTube video. And the YouTube video is from the series The Big Bang Theory. And it's kind of a comical look on positive reinforcement. And if you know any of the characters, Sheldon is basically trying to positively reinforce Penny for what he perceives as appropriate behavior. So let's take a look and let's see. And it might take just a couple minutes or a little bit to load, so bear with me. It's almost there.
Are you finished?
Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon. I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please. Oh. Hey, Kim. Yeah, you know what? Hold on. Let me take this in the hall.
Okay, so that's just a funny little clip, again, of the Big Bang Theory, and it's, you know, they did a little spoof on positive reinforcement. So Sheldon at this point uses chocolate, a highly preferred item for Penny, as a reinforcer to reinforce what he perceives as appropriate behavior, right? So that is just, again, another example. So there are other types of common reinforcers, okay? So there's edibles in general. It could be candy, it could be chocolate, it could be really any kind of food item or drink item, cookies, crackers, chips, juice, anything like that are considered edibles and could be considered reinforcers depending on the child. Toys, including electronics, activities, Attention or social interactions could be attention from any preferred adult, including parents or peers. And again, Sandy talked about, pairing yourself with reinforcement. So then you are, you want the child to see you as the cookie. And again, once you get that established and build that rapport, you yourself can be that reinforcer. And part of that as well could be appropriate touch. So those high fives, those pats on the back, those hugs, things like that can be really reinforcing depending on the child. Sensory stimulation, so things that feel good. It could be things like, swinging on the swing, having that wind blow through your hair. It could be jumping on the trampoline. It could be massage, right? It could be hand massages or, a foot massage, things like that, back massage, anything like that could be considered a reinforcer depending on the child or adult. And then lastly, we have escape. So escape or relief from a non-preferred activity, environment, or something unpleasant. Again, this is negative reinforcement, but we can also use that as a reinforcer as well, absolutely. But, we're really going to try to focus on, what we can add to the environment for this training and use that to our advantage. So, you might ask yourself, so how do I use reinforcers effectively? Now, there are, a handful of components for effective reinforcement, okay? One thing is to really focus on highly preferred items or activities. So you really want to use those highly preferred items or activities as reinforcers. And if you're not sure what they are, really, the simplest thing you can do is just watch your child play, right? If they ever given an array of items to choose from, what do they gravitate towards? How long do they play with that item? So it's not necessarily always just about what they gravitate to, but how long they engage with the item or activity to give you an idea of what may be a highly preferred item or activity and what can be used as a reinforcer. You also want to keep these highly preferred items or activities in your back pocket to use as reinforcement. So this means you don't want to allow free access to them, to these items, or they won't hold their value. Okay, so if a child's highly preferred item or activity that you would like to use as a reinforcer is the use of an iPad, if that child has gotten free access, allowed free access to the item throughout the day, the chances that that will be an effective reinforcer contingent on a particular behavior is probably unlikely. So you really want to make sure that if you're going to use those highly preferred items or activities as a reinforcer, that you limit how often they are allowed to engage in that, and what's the contingency to using that item. So that means that if you're going to use that as a reinforcer, they need to engage in a certain behavior before that reinforcer is given access to. You're allowing them access to it. So just be mindful of that. Now, if you find that, just for instance, the use of the iPad, you really don't want to limit that to your child, but you want to allow them free access to that, that's okay. You can do that. But the only thing is if you do that, then you cannot expect that to work as a reinforcer. If you do not want to not allow free access to them, then that's fine, but you need to find another reinforcer. You need to find something else that you can use, that you can hold in your back pocket, that it's highly reinforcing, that highly preferred, and use that, as a reinforcer. So just be mindful of that. And you also want to vary your reinforcers. So this means that you do not want to give the same reinforcer every time that behavior is done. You don't want to give them the same reinforcer. Okay, so for instance, if your child, again, the iPad, okay, so let's say your child, a highly preferred item is the iPad and you want to use it as reinforcement, you can do that. But if you allow them access to that iPad every time they engage in that behavior, access to the iPad is going to hold less value. It's not going to mean as much. But if you can hold it back and give it at different times and use other reinforcers that are highly preferred and, really, disperse them, pretty evenly, then hopefully those reinforcers will hold their value for a lot longer. So let's say that some of their highly preferred items or activities is a use of an iPad. goldfish, and swinging on the swing. Okay, those are three very different reinforcers, right? So you can vary them. So maybe the first time they engage in that behavior, maybe they get to swing on the swing. The second time they get the reinforce, or they engage in that behavior, they get M&Ms, right? Maybe the third time they engage in that behavior, they'll get use of the iPad. Okay, but it's really important that you vary the reinforcers. As long as they hold similar amount of value, they're still highly preferred items. That should be really, really effective. Again, to hold that, hold that reinforcer with that same value. It's also really important, we talk about varying the reinforcers, that we really think about the timing when we're giving these reinforcers. Now, we're going to get into, the immediacy of reinforcement. What I'm talking about is, for instance, let's say, again, one of the reinforcers is M&Ms, right? And now if you give those M&Ms right after our goldfish, let's go with goldfish. So let's say that your reinforcer is goldfish and you just gave them snack, or you just gave them lunch and they just finished, and then you're trying to use those goldfish as a reinforcer after appropriate behavior. It's less likely that that reinforcer is going to hold the same value because they're probably full, right? They probably don't, they don't have that, they're not deprived of those goldfish, right? But maybe you can use those goldfish before snack or before lunch. So maybe they're a little bit hungry. They may be more motivated to engage in that particular appropriate behavior to gain access to those goldfish, right? So just be mindful of when you decide to use those reinforcers. Another example is, let's say your child has just played outside for an hour. They come inside and they engage in an appropriate behavior. Now, if you are trying to reinforce with another physical activity, it may not be reinforcing. So if you say, oh, after you complete this activity, we're going to go outside and play on the swing. Well, they were just playing on the swing for an hour, right? So it may not hold the same value unless they haven't had it for a while, right? So you really want to make sure you understand the timing of things, particularly when it comes to reinforcement, to make sure that it can be as effective as it possibly can be. Now, another question that you may ask yourself is, what if my child has limited reinforcers? Okay, and this happens quite often where we find that some of our children don't have a huge array of things that they really, really like. You may find that, your child only likes to use the iPad and he maybe go on the swing, right? So now you only have 2 reinforcers if you're lucky, right? So how can I vary it that much if there's only 1 or 2 things that my child likes to do, okay? Now, God forbid that it's raining outside and you can't use one of them, or the iPad's battery doesn't work, then you're only down to 1, okay? So it's really important that we start really focusing on broadening how many reinforcers we have. And a good way to do that is pairing. Now, Sandra Bronzy on Module 1 talked about pairing yourself with high reinforcers to establish yourself as a reinforcement. You can do the same here to broaden your child's known reinforcers. Okay, so what you can do is you can pair a neutral or non-preferred item or activity with well-established high reinforcers. Okay, so you can kind of have this, it's the same kind of setup where you're pairing something neutral to something highly preferred. And what you hope to see is that neutral or non-preferred item or activity becomes a reinforcer all on its own. Okay, so this next video I'm going to show you is another YouTube video, and it's with a teacher and a little boy, and she is trying to pair a neutral activity with a well-established reinforcer so that we can broaden how many reinforcers we have at our disposal, right? So in this video, in the beginning, she asked the boy after he completes an activity, she says, okay, you did a great job. Would you like the stuffed shark, which is a stuffed animal shark, or do you want the orange cone? Okay, now the orange cone is a neutral item. Okay, so when you see in the video, the first few times he's gonna continue to be pointing to that shark, right? That's what he finds reinforcing, right? It's his choice. And as you go on, she's trying to get that orange cone to be that reinforcer. So she starts pairing that neutral item with highly reinforcing things. Okay, so she's pairing the neutral item or that cone with fun. Okay, and in the end, you'll see what happens. Okay, so we're going to go over and we're going to show you that video. Just 1 second. Okay, here we go.
There you go. Nice job. You can look at this for a minute, okay? Good, Melanie. You are answering so cool. You want to play with the shark or the cone? Cool. Let's play with it. Yeah, go for it. Oh, I have a good idea. Let's talk to them. Stand up. Okay, quick. Ready? We'll run. Ready? Yeah, the duck is. Nice job, Noah. You're sitting so cool. Hey, Noah, do you want to play with the cones or the shark? Okay. I want this one with the holes in it. Ooh, this is my sword. Watch out. Oh, dear. You got me. Oh, I knocked yours off. Oh, did I almost get you? Now it's my hat. I'm going to be a clown. Look, I love a balloon for you. Here you go. Oh, dear. Oh, no. Fishy fish. Oh, you want two? Oh, I have a good idea. You can be the octopus, and you can have all these different legs. Okay. She's swim around. Are you ready to catch it? Go. Woohoo! Nice throw, or nice catch. Oh. Ready? Good one. Oh, I hope I catch it. Oh, almost. Okay, so when I hit the ball, you have to run and get it, okay? Ready? Good one. 5. Okay, do you want to hit it now? Yes. Go for it. Okay. Now you have to run. Oh, I tagged you. There, you got it. Nice job. Do you want to check out the cones or the shark? Okay, cool. Ooh, what should we do with them this time? Oh, Nemo again. Okay. Oh, you want to put them on your feet this time? That's pretty silly. I'll put one on this one.
Can I have it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, you're an octopus. Look at all your legs. Oh,
Okay, so that's that video there. Okay, hold on 1 second. We're gonna go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so on that video, as you can see, the teacher was able to pair that orange cone with fun, right? And as you can also see, the teacher was already paired. She has she has been the cookie, right? So just playing with her was reinforcement, right? So she paired her fun that she was, engaged with that child with that cone. And in the end, guess what? That child picked that orange cone, which, I mean, how neutral can an orange cone be, right? And that child was able to really enjoyed using those cones in that way and to play. And guess what? That's one more thing that, you can use, that child can now have, or that teacher can use as reinforcement for appropriate behavior. So we're broadening everything that we can use. Another thing that you can do, at your home is, if say your child really likes to play with blocks, right? And you're trying to build, broaden how many reinforcers you have. You can start incorporating other small toys into those blocks, right? So maybe you start incorporating the, little animal figures, and playing with those blocks. So a highly reinforcing thing or highly preferred thing is those blocks. You can start playing with other toys with using those blocks, and again, pair that so that hopefully maybe the child would just gravitate towards that, those little figures. And that's, again, another is just helping you out and building up that repertoire and building up how many options you have when you're talking about using reinforcement, again, and varying that reinforcement to, again, make it as most effective as you can. Okay, immediacy of reinforcement. We're going to talk about immediacy of reinforcement in this slide, and the next slide is going to be about frequency. Okay, so immediacy and frequency are really important concepts that we really need to use when we're dealing with reinforcement. Okay, so what this means, immediacy means that after, reinforcement should be given immediately or as close as you possibly can following the appropriate behavior for it to be effective. Okay, so it's really important that you do this, because if you don't, okay, your child may not connect the appropriate behavior with the reinforcer. So if a child engages in appropriate behavior, you walk away and you come back and you hand them or give them access to whatever reinforcer you chose to give them, they may not connect that appropriate behavior gained them access to that. They may not understand the connection. And then on top of that, there's a good chance that as that time has passed between the appropriate behavior and the reinforcer, something's happened in between there, right? So there's a good chance that while you walked away and come back, they possibly have engaged in challenging behavior, or behavior that you really don't want them to do. So then now you're in trouble, because now you're deciding, okay, do I reinforce? Because you're trying to still reinforce the appropriate behavior because you want to increase that behavior. But if you do it while they're engaging in a challenging behavior, what you're actually reinforcing is the challenging behavior, not the appropriate behavior. So then you've missed the opportunity to reinforce the appropriate behavior. So it's really important that you reinforce immediately after the behavior. So you may want to keep things very close to you, or, whether you need to hide them or put them in a spot where maybe the child can't see it or gain access to it without engaging in the behavior, but something you have easy access to. It's really close to you. So that as soon as that behavior is complete, that behavior is done, then you can reinforce really quickly right away. And that's really important for reinforcement to be effective. Frequency of reinforcement is also really important. And how frequent you reinforce depends on how long that child has engaged in that behavior. So if it's a new skill or they're learning just an appropriate behavior, the reinforcement should occur each and every time to start. Okay, now that may seem excessive, but when you're talking about trying to build a skill, okay, whether it's really skill development or just engaging in that appropriate behavior, it's highly important that you reinforce every time, or as close to it as you can to start. As that skill improves or the appropriate behavior becomes more consistent, then you can start slowly fading out those reinforcers. So if the appropriate behavior is finishing a particular task, Maybe as that child becomes more consistent with being able to engage in that behavior, maybe the child needs to engage in 2 tasks before they get reinforcement. Okay, you can start slowly fading out how often those you are giving access to that reinforcer. Another thing you can do besides spreading out when you get the reinforcers is how much. So again, with a new skill, whether it's an appropriate behavior or not, if you're doing a new skill or appropriate behavior, you can usually want to give a high amount, right? You really want to heavily reinforce in the beginning. So let's say that the reinforcer that you want to use is, say, M&Ms. So maybe the first few times that you are trying to reinforce this, you're giving them a good handful of M&Ms, right? Now, obviously, you can't withstand that, right? You can't maintain that forever. But as that child starts to improve on that behavior, you can start fading out how many you give. So maybe you give them a handful the first few times, and then you slowly start fading out. So maybe give less and less and less each time they engage in that behavior. And over time, hopefully they will continue to engage in that skill because it's a more consistent, it's part of their routine, and they won't need as much reinforcement. And that's really what the goal is. The goal of reinforcement, especially with these, adding these, certain reinforcers to, as a consequence, is we slowly want to fade them out because, no one can withstand this for forever. But to start to build on these skills, you really need to use them to get them so that that student, this is just part of their routine. This is what the expectation is here, and good things happen when I engage in this behavior. Okay, so it's really important that that we use reinforcement, and we use it frequently to start, and then we can slowly fade it out. So in summary, we really want to use reinforcement to our advantage. Okay, so that means that we're going to use reinforcement. We're going to use those reinforcers to promote appropriate behavior. We're going to really want to focus on highly preferred items or activities to use as reinforcers. Okay, so we need to really be really observant about what we find in our child's environment that they seem to really enjoy, right? What items or activities do they play with the most or for the longest duration? Those items or activities you really want to use as reinforcers if we can. And you also really want to vary your reinforcers, okay? We don't want to use the same reinforcement or reinforcers every single time. We want to vary it. And again, it's going to depend on, your schedule, your time of day, about what reinforcers will be most likely to be effective in that situation. And again, remember pairing. We can build on those, on what your child likes by start pairing those neutral activities or items with highly preferred items, so that those neutral items become reinforcers all themselves. And then again, it builds on what we have to choose from and what we have at, to our disposal to use. We also want to give your child access to highly preferred items or activities, and or give relief to unpleasant or non-preferred activities. Again, that's like those breaks, those negative reinforcement, immediately following appropriate behavior. We need to get, pretty much soon as the behavior has been accomplished, we really want to go in with that reinforcement. And then to start, reinforce appropriate behavior every time. Okay, as your child's appropriate behavior becomes more consistent, you can gradually fade out the reinforcer. So again, meaning less frequently and or a smaller amount each time. So those are some key concepts that I hope you got, I hope you like, and yeah. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, so lastly, this is the, this is all our contact information. So if you have any questions or you need any more information, please reach out to me. Again, my name is Beth Estes. I'm in the Kingston site, but I'm happy to answer any questions from either Ellenville or Kingston for sure. Also, we have my colleagues here that would be also more than happy to answer any questions, or if you need any more information, please let one of us know. Again, we're here to help. And the next module, I believe, is going to be Sandra Bronzi is going to be doing that training, and she is going to be talking about functions of behavior. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you all soon. Take care.